And good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, April 15th, 2020. It's tax day in normal years when your income taxes would be due. And today I got my stimulus check, courtesy of President Trump and the US Congress, deposited in my checking account today. Um, so, a gift from the IRS on this tax day. I hope those of you who are supposed to get a stimulus check get yours soon. I don't know if you heard, but those who are getting a physical check will have on that physical check President Trump's name on it. And it's the first time that the IRS is distributing checks that have the president's name on them. Richard Nixon, when he was president back in 1972, running for re-election, had his name put on Social Security checks as a reminder just before the election who was the president. Donald Trump is having his name put on stimulus checks as a reminder that he's running for re-election in this election year. Okay, lots of stuff taking place in the world. Let me just get my thoughts on get them together real quickly. The latest numbers on the coronavirus. Let's just go through those real quickly right now. Worldwide, there is almost 2 million people who have the coronavirus, 1,997,000. Half a million people have recovered, which means that about 1.5 million have not yet recovered. And there's been 127,000 deaths worldwide. Here in the United States, we are by far the country that is experiencing this the worst. 614,000 people have the virus, and 26,000 have died. In the state of Texas, there are 13,000, almost 14,000. Oh, let me get the latest numbers. 14,624 people in the state who have the virus, and 318 have died. In the city of Abilene, for those of you who are here and those of you who aren't, and we miss you, there's 74 active cases, 74 positive cases of the virus. A couple of those have recovered, but there's 74 cases. Okay, lots of news, really. Let me just get to it. Number one, the big news yesterday in terms of politics, since this is a class on politics and government, Barack Obama endorsed Joe Biden yesterday. And then this morning, Elizabeth Warren just announced that she is endorsing Joe Biden. And of course, Bernie Sanders did so a couple days ago. So Joe Biden is working to get the Democrat Party all united as it confronts the challenge of running against an incumbent president. Need to understand, when an incumbent president is running for re-election, like Donald Trump is, it is very difficult to defeat him. Very, very difficult. And historically, incumbent presidents have won re-election. Okay? So, Joe Biden has a big challenge in front of him. He is helped in some ways by the economic collapse that is taking place because people are going to blame Donald Trump for that more than they're going to blame Joe Biden. And he's also helped a bit by the government's response to the coronavirus pandemic. And because he can sit out there and criticize it, but he has no responsibility. President Trump is the one who has responsibility for it. Just a couple of other things I want to bring up today in regards to that. The World Health Organization is exactly that. It's the health organization for the whole world, and they keep track of what is going on in the situations. I mean, anything regarding our health, whether it's HIV, the flu, and now the coronavirus. And President Trump has decided to blame the World Health Organization for not doing enough to stand up to China and not getting more accurate information out of China in regards to the coronavirus. And so what he announced yesterday was he is withholding U.S. funding from the coronavirus. Whether he has the authority to do that is something that still is going to be debated. To be honest, I don't think he can withhold the funding from them legally, but I'm not positive about that. In other words, Congress has authorized that funding. The president signed it into law. How can he then take it back? But we'll see how that's going to go. Also, the president 2 days ago said that he had total authority to get the country back to work. I don't want to be critical of the president, but I'm going to be critical of his interpretation of the Constitution. His statement is incorrect. We are at home. We are not at McMurray University because Governor Greg Abbott is the one who ordered us to be home. President Trump has not ordered us to be home. He has not issued stay-at-home orders. Do you know why? He doesn't have the authority under the Constitution. Under the Constitution, we talked about this with federalism. The powers that are given to the president, Article 1, Section 8, are those that are given to the national government. And the 10th Amendment to the Constitution says the powers not given to Congress, not given to the president, are given to the states or the people. Among those powers are what are called police powers. And it's exactly what we're talking about here. The power to tell us to stay home is a police power. That is a state function. I am in my kitchen rather than in my American government class because Governor Greg Abbott told me to stay home. Mayor Anthony Williams told me to stay home. County Judge Downing Bowles told me to stay home. Donald Trump encouraged me to stay home, advised me to stay home, but he did not order me to stay home. He doesn't have that power. I can't explain it any other way than that. So now the president, after he said he had the total authority, yesterday seemed to back off a bit and said, I'm going to authorize the states to start letting people back to work. Again, he doesn't have that authority. There is no authorization coming from the president. He can recommend, he can advise, but he cannot order, he cannot authorize. He does not have the powers. Governor Greg Abbott has those powers. Mayor Anthony Williams has those powers. County Judge Downing Bowles has those powers. Okay? So I just want to emphasize that the president is saying something that is unconstitutional. He's saying he has a power that he doesn't have. And you can read the Constitution just like I can, and it's right there. Look at the States' Rights Amendment, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. Okay? All right. Just want to share with you a couple of things about the coronavirus and our response to it. Here's one of them that I think should really impress us. The CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has announced yesterday that about 90% of us are in compliance with the staying home rules. And originally, what they were talking about was they were thinking that only 50% would be in compliance. Turns out 90% of us are being, what's the right word, compliant, are obeying the guidance from the stay-at-home suggestions from the Centers for Disease Control. And I really should be careful with my rules. The CDC is part of the president's administration, so they're part of the federal government. The CDC gives guidelines. The president shares those guidelines. We are advised to follow them. But again, the rules come from our governor and our local officials. And so what's happening is the CDC advised, the president issued guidelines, the governor issued orders. So 90% of us are in compliance with the governor's orders, and that's the way it should be said. Okay, also, really interesting poll came out yesterday, and it asked people, this is a Harris poll, and 2,000 people were surveyed. It asked people, how long are you willing to stay home before you want to get life back to normal? And only 9% of people surveyed want to get back to work in the next week or two. 23% say, let's wait 3 to 4 weeks. 51% say, hey, we're going to wait at least a month before we go back to work. And 18% are saying, hey, I'm not going back to work for 6 months or more. Okay, so what we've got, the president wants us to get back to work. Some politicians, businesses want us to get back to work. Reality is most Americans are not ready to get back to work. There's a lot of fear out there. And I was discussing this on my radio show yesterday, and a couple callers called up and they said, well, is this something that's just for older people, or how do younger people feel? And so I looked at what is called the crosstabs of the survey, and 18 to 34-year-olds, so most of my class, 64% say we shouldn't go back until more than a month. For those 35 to 49, it's 62%. Okay, and then those older, my age group, 71% said, let's take a month before we go back. And of the oldest group, 65 and older, 79% say, we're going to take our time going back to work. Okay, I bring all that up because now there's all this talk about how we're going to start to get back to work. Crisis nationwide is nearing a peak. Okay, we're having more deaths from this virus than we thought possible. But it's nearing a peak, and it's going to start going down. And as a consequence, nationwide, people are saying, well, because we separated, it's time to go back to work, get back to school. The problem is, when you look at specific areas, the crisis is still just building. Here in Texas, the sense is that we're 2 weeks away from the peak, and we've got another 2 weeks of increasing deaths. Same thing in Abilene, another couple of weeks of increasing people getting infected and maybe dying. So we will all at some point be getting back, but it's a question of when it is. And the whole point everybody's concerned about, we go back to work, we go back to school, and our being together again brings the virus back. A Harvard University epidemiologist said that we need to think about this as going to be affecting our lives all the way through 2022. 2 more years of this. Okay, on that depressing note, I'm going to stop. See you all on Friday.